This is episode 272 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Welcome back to the show. Today, I have Charles Crompton back on after about 2 years. Charles is an Airbnb arbitrage investor as well as an Airbnb manager. He is a guy who knows a heck of a lot about wealth building, worked with Edward Jones, he and his wife, for many years. And he tells the story today of how he's raised a young family and built a very, very profitable and high revenue business over the past several years. Charles is a guy that quit his job. Him and his wife both quit their jobs before they'd even rolled out this new business. They both worked there ever since university, and they just decided, that's it, we're going all in on Airbnb arbitrage after hearing about it on this show. So this is a firsthand example of how this show has impacted people. Airbnb arbitrage is one of those strategies that I think personally is the fastest way. It's the fastest way I know of for the average person to quit their 9-to-5 profitably. And I'm not encouraging anybody to do that, but it's just my observation. I've seen it done and done by quite a few people, and it's all about that hustle. You got that hustle, it can be yours. That's my take, not advice. So just before we jump into the episode, which I couldn't get enough. I would happily go on for an extra hour there, get all my questions answered, and then have a further conversation with him after the episode, just because I love the idea. I think that there are problems with the idea in that you can structure it incorrectly and you got to be really careful. But I think that there's a lot of potential, and obviously do your due diligence, but enjoy this episode. And before we get into it, if you could kindly show some love to the channel. If you're an audio listener, if you would kindly leave that raving 5-star review, it will certainly help more people to find the show, and I would really appreciate it. So let's jump into the show. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I've got Charles Crompton back on after a couple of years at least. I think it's maybe 2-3 years.
It might be 2 years on the dot, just about.
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, thanks for doing this. I know we connected recently. I said, absolutely, come on back on the show, and we got the new studio now, so got you in here. And for those people who haven't heard your previous appearance on the show, you came on before, you talked about your arbitrage business. Just recap your story though, because some people won't have seen that episode.
Sure. Yeah. It kind of all happened out of nowhere, to be honest. My wife and I both worked corporate jobs. We worked at the same company, an investment firm, for about 12 years, climbing the corporate ladder, working towards retiring early. So creating wealth was always a focus for us. And so we had done a good job there, investing in stocks pretty aggressively. That's my background. Passive real estate investing, just focus on creating wealth so we can retire early and spend more time with our family and doing the things we want to do. So that was the path that we were on. And then all of a sudden, my worlds kind of collide. We had a baby girl, and that was all of a sudden where the path that I thought was the right path just didn't feel right anymore, because retiring early meant really climbing that corporate ladder, a lot of hours at work, working the 9-to-5. But now I have a 1-year-old girl. We wanted to have a second, and I just the paths didn't align properly anymore. And so I started to get less excited about growing in my corporate job and started to consider what else I might do to find more freedom, essentially. I had seen a bunch of stuff on Instagram before. I'd seen arbitrage on Instagram before. I didn't really think too much about it. And then someone, a friend of mine, referred me to a podcast episode of yours where someone in Canada had started an arbitrage business. And I think they had been doing it for almost a year or maybe longer, and they had seen success with it. Yeah. So that all of a sudden it made it very real. And I just thought, geez, someone's doing that here. Why can't we do this? And so I went to work pretty much right after that episode. And so this was 2021 in October. I heard the episode, and I pretty much was waking up at 4:00 every morning and working in my evenings after my day job for about 6 weeks, just kind of figuring out the business model. Can this work? Would it work? All hypothetical, kind of building the business behind the scenes without launching any properties. And then essentially we got to the point where we just felt we can do this. We want to take the risk on ourselves to see if we can create the life of our dreams. And we both my wife and I quit at the same time, pretty much out of nowhere before we even launched the business. And that was the start of it all.
No one does that.
No one does
I
that.
remember
No,
we
you're
talked
right.
about that. We talked about that before. And so you already had your daughter?
Yes, and now we have a boy as well. So my daughter is now almost 4. She turns 4 next month, and our little guy is 18 months. Charlotte and William.
Congrats.
Thank you, sir.
That makes for a busy household. So
Just wild. Two young kids and building a new business. It's
insane.
It's insane.
So how do you guys handle the responsibilities with the kids and running the business? Are you a work from home operation? Do you have like a nanny or a daycare? How does that all work?
Yeah, good question. For a while there, it was insane because not too long after starting the business, we had our boy. And so now we had 2 babies in diapers, and one was in daycare. But I mean, as you know, it's wild. And so for the most part, it was a divide and conquer, or at least chef and sous chef kind of thing, where my wife was leading the life with the kids, right? And I would support wherever I'm able to, and vice versa. I led the charge with building the business, but Tiffany was always there every step of the way to support me in whatever way she could. And we kind of came together at nighttime after each having hard days, and just trying to support each other as best we could.
And how did that work? Did you guys like tap in with the kids and okay, you're working on the business now, and then does that make sense? Is there continuity between like conversations you've had with say people you're trying to onboard for units,
right?
And then are you having your wife take over? Like how did that all work?
For the first couple of years, we were trying to find the right balance essentially. And what we found to work best was that we each led very much the 2 sides. Tiffany was the leader at home. That was her responsibility. That way, even I would say the mental capacity, right, to really be proactively thinking about what you need to do to be raising 2 kids.
What you need it's a full-time job.
Absolutely.
So, that's what the reason I ask that is like there's task changing time, and then there's also if you're passing the baton now you have to catch her up to speed. So it wouldn't really make a ton of sense. So you keep focusing on that. She keeps focused on home,
and that's what it was. And then it was just what we were doing. My wife and I communicate very, very well. We always have, and so that helps. That we're very honest. We're very transparent. Nothing's hidden. And we're very vulnerable with each other. And so when we were starting this journey, and it was crazy, I can't say it any other way, the chaos was absolutely nuts. It felt very overwhelming at times, but we kind of came together in the evening and we just were honest about where we need each other, where she needed me, and where I needed to step away, where I just had to from the business to help with 2 kids, and vice versa, where I was just being overwhelmed and where she could find the time to help. But it was very much she's leading one, I'm leading the other, because your point is bang on. The time and inefficiency of trying to
task switch,
it just didn't make sense. So that was the first 2 years, but then all of a sudden we've come into a new era, I would say, where we have some stability, lots of stability. Both kids are in daycare full time. And so my wife and I are both at home. To answer your earlier question, yes, it's very much a remote work from home operation, almost entirely. And so my wife and I both get to work from home right beside each other. We each have our clear roles for the business, and the kids are at daycare. But we also have the flexibility that when kids are home, we're able to be very much with them. And that's what this business has afforded us.
It's pretty critical. And I find the biggest way to ensure that you can be present in the evening is to have an effective day of work, be able to be effective during the day. I have that challenge because when I work from home, I'm so close that I can just pop inside and help out.
It's dangerous. And that's what happens. But you know what? And I, at first I was almost battling that. Like I wasn't sure because I wasn't being efficient because I was down seeing my kids. And then I thought, no, this is the life that I wanted. I wanted to be able to bring my worlds together and find my own balance and to be there. And more than anything, that's what I'm grateful for, that quitting 2.5 years ago, I've been there to see my kids at every step of the way. And I'm beyond grateful for that. And it's also why we keep working so hard to continue building this dream life of ours where we get to bring our worlds together, work and family, the way that makes the most sense for us. And it's really exciting, especially now that life feels more manageable. The business runs almost on its own. We'll talk more about that. And we just get to figure out what every day looks like for us. And it's great.
Yeah. Where do you live?
Burlington, just 5 minutes down the road, downtown area.
Didn't know. Okay. And that's like long-term. Is that home for you?
Yeah. I've been in Burlington for 10, 12 years, I guess, 10 years or so. And my wife and I moved into our home where we're at now about 5 years ago.
Okay. And like, where were you born?
Born in Oakville, just down the street.
This is your neighborhood.
This is my neighborhood. I went to school at McMaster University, which is only 20 minutes down the road. And so, this is very much my hometown.
What about your wife?
Similar. Grew up in Etobicoke, went to school in Mississauga, or Toronto, I should say. And then obviously moved to Burlington with me.
And then refresh me on the corporate background that you guys were doing.
Yeah. So we both worked at the same company from right out of university until we quit. So Edward Jones is the investment firm. Tiffany was on the marketing, talent acquisition side as well. So she has a kind of a broad experience on the corporate side. I was also on the corporate side, but much more the investment and strategy side.
Nice.
More purely financial. Tiff's especially
so
not.
You guys weren't working with the clients directly?
No, that's right. We essentially were responsible. Obviously my role changed quite a bit over the years, but more than anything else, my responsibility was to help figure out how we can better serve our clients, how we can help them understand their goals more, how we can help them get there through our investment options. And so that corporate strategy, and then we took that strategy and bundled it up to help our financial advisors across Canada serve their clients better.
Gotcha. Okay, so then you guys switched out of that. You had a pretty stable base. I guess you had the savings set aside to cover whatever it was going to take to get up and running.
That's right.
On the arbitrage. And the thing I like about it is it's like how could it not work? You know what I mean? If you know a concept works, it's like, it's not magical. It doesn't mean it just works for somebody else and it won't for you. But it's like, are you willing to put all your chips on the table? And for some people, you absolutely should not. So that is not my advice.
Sure.
But some people, that'll just be what you'll do because that's your personality.
Yeah. And you know what? I would say it certainly wasn't my personality, which is why I caught people off guard so much, even my friends and family. Up until that point, I was such a planner. I mean, that's my background is finances, right? I went to school for finance and economics. I am a certified financial planner, chartered investment manager. I'm a planner, especially on the finance side. And so up until that point, I had spent my adult life with a very clear plan of how much I was going to grow my income, my salary, where I was going to invest it, and when we were going to retire. It was so finite and clear. The path to get there was obvious. And I'd always been on that path. And there's almost no risk in that, right? If you invest consistently, steadily, you have the right habits for creating wealth, you're just going to keep creating wealth. And that's what we did. So to leave that structured life, in every way structured, comfortable life, to take, and leave the high paying, secure job on just something that may work or may not, caught people crazy off guard. And ultimately it was my mentor who helped helped me to do it. She was my boss at the time at Edward Jones, and she's just, she's incredible. But, she pushed me more on the development side, right? That I was getting way too comfortable. I'm a big believer that, happiness and living your best life is from overcoming challenges, pursuing stuff that's difficult. And I was at a place where life became real easy. We're living in our dream home. We have lots of money in the bank account. Work is easy. I started to get bored with life, and not to mention I didn't have that freedom with my. So it just became
the time thing. Yeah, I get the time thing.
And that was it. We decided to take a risk on ourselves, and then knowing, of course, hey, if this doesn't work, which it was always a possibility, if this doesn't work, it flops, we could always find jobs.
We're going to be back okay. And apply to. You could probably go back. To the other
certainly,
one.
certainly could go back to Edward Jones or go elsewhere, try something else.
Yeah. So there were options there. It's like you said, it probably caught people off guard, but it was a logical move. And it wasn't just you guys doing it on your own, right? You had some strategic partners that were coming in and kind of helping you with this.
Yeah, that's right. We're not partners anymore. About a year ago, we went our separate ways. But it all kind of happened naturally and made sense the whole way along. If we did it again, I don't know that we would do it differently. But we came together with strategic partners to own very different sides of the business. And the reason for it was our plan to grow real quickly, right? We had the investments to do that. And we thought with partners who can run more of the operations while we led the business development and growth of the company, that would allow us to build a bigger company faster. It made perfect sense. And it worked really well for a time, to the point when we realized we don't need this many owners, decision makers, especially when you start to, and this hadn't thought of this, when you start to try and attach what your business life is going to look like to family life, if you're trying to share that decision with other partners, it just doesn't line up, right? Mm-hmm. We want the business to look a certain way so that it matches the lifestyle that we want. And that may be very different from our strategic partners. So I think it got to a point where for so many reasons, it made sense for them to continue building their own business, which they continue to do. And we're cheering for them and we're doing. And so for the last year, it's been just us.
Okay. Did you rebrand your company or anything like that?
Yes, it's still in the process now where we're really getting into the branding side, which helps with a number of things. But before that, there wasn't a lot of branding to do. I mean, you just kind of had your operations behind the scenes, right?
It wasn't a public facing brand really. Anyway.
No, not really. Although that's more and more becoming a focus of ours, where we're going to create a public facing brand, build repeat clientele, direct bookings, rely less on the platforms, et cetera. I guess if we're talking about arbitrage, maybe we should share a little bit about what this actually is. And
well, my audience will be familiar with it, but you're right, we should. So arbitrage, and I'm assuming you exclusively do arbitrage?
No.
You do management too?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
we'll talk about that as well.
So arbitrage is when you rent somebody's unit out and then you put that unit onto a short-term stay platform or re-rent it, essentially.
That's it.
So that's an arbitrage where, the goal is you're renting it for more than you're paying, you're managing it, it's a profitable business. Why would a landlord do it? Well, they do it because they are sold on the fact that you're a professional, you're going to treat their unit well. And it's going to be less headaches than them having a regular tenant.
That's it. That's the arbitrage model, that there's value if the investor trusts you as a person and as a company, you're the ideal tenant. I mean, the property's going to be kept in pristine condition. Our business depends on it, and we handle everything. Property management. And so they get baked in property management because we need to coordinate all property management with our guests. So we lead that process as well. So it's an easy value to present to investors, as long as they trust you.
That's interesting. I'm the tenant and the property manager. That's actually a good sales pitch. Never even thought of saying it that way.
Well, yeah, and you know what? I think that was our biggest strength was. I would say building the company from scratch, the thing that we did right. We did a lot of things wrong, and I want to talk about that as well. Holy mistakes. But something that we did very well from the beginning and we continue to do today is build a business with the end client and customer in mind. So I think I find a lot of people, at least from what I can see with other arbitrage companies, they see it more as an investment, right? They see it as like a high ROI, which it can afford, and lots of profit. But they're relying on the math more than anything else, like finding the right property that's going to math out right, and they're treating it like you would buying a property, right? Really doing the deep dive on the numbers. But from the beginning, our focus was knowing the math worked. We've seen it work in so many locations.
So you're going on faith a lot more if you picked up a location?
Yes. I would say we're doing a lot of the math.
Your numbers, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, and that's my background. I'm a financial analyst guy. So I'd say I didn't worry so much about that. I knew it was going to work. And yes, we came up with the processes to make sure that we're picking the best properties. But in terms of creating a sustainable company that was going to be successful long term, we spent a lot of the time focusing on the actual company, starting with who's our client and how do we provide the best value to that client. And that started with our real estate investors, the landlords that we were leasing the properties from, or on the management model, the clients that we were serving. This is their property and we need to provide value. So what does that look like? So we spent so much time essentially building the design of our company to provide the best possible value to our arbitrage landlords and our management clients. And then second to that is the same question that we're asking: how do we provide the best value to our guests? But the guests can't exist if our landlords don't love us at their properties. And so it started with landlords first, guests second, but constantly asking that question: how can we do better for our two clients, the investor and the guest? And then how do you design the company and the processes and the systems to provide that value? And then knowing if we did that, the numbers are going to be phenomenal. But more importantly, it's sustainable. We're not just relying on math to always work. We just know if we're always providing good value to the end user, we're going to have a good business over the long term.
Do you find yourself outperforming what you would predict or what the market is showing? Like if you go on AirDNA, you come up with, here's what this could do. Do you find that you can outperform those?
Short answer is yes, although I would say a lot of that data that's out there, or I would say
not good data,
the easy data is just not good. And that's the, people go on AirDNA, not knowing any better, right? But they're going on AirDNA and they're relying on these averages. And I would say from what we've seen, when you go onto AirDNA and you put in an address, sometimes it overstates the revenue. And I know looking at it, that's nonsense. There's no way you can bring in that kind of revenue. And I've seen the opposite, where I looked up a property we currently have, and like one,
and it's way too low.
And it's way too low. And we're gonna crush those numbers. So there's certainly a learning curve that takes some time to properly assess the right location, the right property within that location, and really give an accurate projection on the revenue.
Okay, so what kind of locations are you still growing in right now?
Yeah, so we are still growing in Canada overall, both arbitrage and management. I would say management is more the focus. So Southern Ontario, Alberta, Calgary in particular, and New Brunswick is our main locations that we operate in Canada. And so rather than going to new cities, we're still operating in the cities that we're in and looking to expand and grow. I would say more on the management side, especially in the GTA, huge opportunity in the GTA for management business. And then from an arbitrage perspective, we want to try new markets. So our focus is the US. We're expanding to Florida in the coming months, the greater Tampa area most likely. Currently working with apartment communities to negotiate some deals there. And that's our focus for the operations.
Okay, so in Southern Ontario, so Golden Horseshoe, part of it?
Yes.
And going out to London Way, like, is there anything you're avoiding, or?
We're just, I would say overall, when you're trying to look for a location, and people ask this question a lot of time, like, what are you looking for? And we have this kind of, funnel system where the first thing that you should be looking at is, first look for a bigger city. You're not going to be doing this in a small town, so find a bigger city with a decent population. And then the first thing you're checking for is the regulations. Like, what's their stance on short-term rentals?
My follow-up question, because pretty much every municipality since we've spoken has now limited it to 180 days owner-occupied only.
I would say many, yes.
Many? Okay.
More than you might think have not.
I think Barrie is still fair game.
Barrie's fair game. Burlington is, and Burlington's a phenomenal market. I don't want people overcrowding us, but but yeah, there's definitely, Kitchener's still pretty much an open market. And so I would say there's a lot of regulations, but some are open. But I would also say, because when people hear regulations, if you're not close to this industry, regulations are scary. And I would say, especially as a real estate investor, regulations are scary, right? Because you are buying a property with intent for short-term rental, and if regulations don't go your way,
that's not wise.
Yeah, not wise. So regulations can be scary for the real estate investor. I would say for someone in our business who's full-time building a business in this industry, regulations are actually a good thing that's doing a good thing for us. There's no barriers to entry otherwise. And so what you get is just crazy oversupply of short-term rentals, with everyone popping up a short-term rental by throwing furniture inside. And when you just have that much supply, it just drops the nightly rates for everyone in that location. And so the regulations do a good job of scaring away the right people. And the businesses who understand how to navigate within those regulations are able to scoop up and outperform.
Right. And I'm sure you've picked up, it's your job, you make it your business, little things you can do to make your rentals perform better, the good photos, the good staging.
Yes, and that's essentially the rest of the funnel there. So the top line is the regulations. You need to understand it. I wouldn't say you're looking for ones that don't have regulations. You want to understand them and know what's the strategy? How will you run your business within these regulations? So call it the most obvious one you mentioned, 180 days in primary residence. So that's more of a management client area, because it's hard to scale in an area.
How do you arbitrage that?
It's tough. Landlords can often get you a license, and it's legitimate, but there's a lot of challenges, I would say, and so you need some close guidance from a mentor, I think. But from a management client perspective, these markets work extremely well because the supply is definitely capped. The supply in these restricted areas is reasonable, and so the performance can be significant, and yet the 180 days rule doesn't impact anything, because the reality reality is from October till April, you're looking for midterm tenants anyway. The short-term demand is so low in those 6 months that running it for 30 days or more. So that's what you're allowed to do, right? You can run a short-term rental for the 6 months of the year where you're going to make really good money from May until September, April to September, do the 108, and that's where you make all your profits, really. And then from October till March, you're finding people to stay for your property at your property for 1 to 6 months. Really book up the winter with long-term quality guests, cover all your costs, and then you're ready to make a fortune again for the next 6 months. So that's our strategy anyway in most Southern Ontario markets, especially. And so these restrictions don't cause us any harm.
Yeah. So you do operate in those markets then too, but more as a manager.
More as a manager, yeah. And that's one thing that we're actually looking to expand on. We love the management side of the business. It's just a great way to diversify, right? So it's the operations are almost identical, right? So once you have
I would think management's better because then the only real difference is you're not paying for all the furniture up front. Your upside's a little potentially lower because if you arbitrage it and you really crush, you can take the lion's share of the profit.
And you just articulated it there. Like there's a clear difference between the two. So with arbitrage, the upfront capital investment can be significant, right? To launch a 3-bedroom property, you're probably looking at $15,000, right? If you with arbitrage, you need close to 15
good quality furniture, labor, all that stuff.
Unless you're doing it yourself, I mean, maybe you can get it down to 10 or 9 if you're really sourcing cheap stuff, but it's a big number for every property. So way more upfront capital, more risk, of course, because you're signing a lease and you're there and it's your capital invested. But then on the upside, yes, greater potential for profit, and I would say a greater return on your time. So with management clients, you have a client, and all of a sudden it becomes like any other business. The onboarding there, the financial reporting that you should be providing to your clients, you need to provide them a level of service. And so with arbitrage, you can scale so quickly, and you have no clients that need your attention.
You just pay your rent.
You pay your rent, and that's your best. Pay your rent and keep the property in good shape, keep the neighborhood respected, and your landlords are happy. They don't want to hear from you. That's the objective. Don't bother your
just
landlord.
Pay us and don't talk to us.
Yeah, but once you have a client where they're relying on the performance of your business for them to get higher performance and see higher revenue, you have a client. And so as you build your clients, it'll definitely slow down the growth of your company. But it's also a ton of fun. Like at the end of the day, we're in this business to create wealth for ourselves and create that freedom. But we also love talking to other people who are trying to do the same. And real estate investors are the best of the best, right? Every time we meet investors, I look to build those relationships, see what opportunities come from that, and show them what we can do. And you never see where the opportunities go. So we're really enjoying building out the management side of the business, diversification, lower risk.
It's a lower risk for you, right?
Certainly lower risk for us. Yeah, absolutely.
Because, I mean, the arbitrage model and committing to rent when you don't know in a certain market or you're not sure, if you back that out and just go into management, then your downside is protected. Yeah, you're going to have your time into it.
Yes.
Because even if you're not paying for the furniture, you probably still want to oversee and direct what's being bought and how it's being staged.
Absolutely. And we'll do that as well. So we offer all of this to our management clients. If they have an empty property and they say, hey, I want you guys to set it up, we'll do everything. Essentially, we'll design it. We'll put a budget on it.
So do you have employees that run in and put it all together?
That's it. That? Just like we would with our regular arbitrage, and we'll work with them on their budget. If they want to bring the price down, we'll have like our priority list of must-haves, and then we have some secondary options of stuff. So we'll work with each client, and we'll take on as much of the work as they want us to. If they want to be fully passive, perfect. If they want to actually set it up themselves, we'll give them the guidance and coaching only kind of thing, and they can do the work themselves. So we leave the options open for our clients.
Okay. And how many are you at right now with your current business? I know you've separated from your previous partner, so you probably lost some of the units there.
Yes, yeah, we got rid of some. We are now at 50 listings across Canada, almost exactly, and then we do have 10 that we've negotiated in the greater Tampa area. So we'll launch those in May or June.
Okay, so you're just working through the acquisition of furniture and things like that at this point?
That's exactly right, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's not a small expansion. That's a quick one. But Tampa's a great market for that, I think.
Well, and it's a different world in some of those locations than in Canada. So in Canada, we're talking about residential properties that we're in almost entirely. Detached homes and duplexes
so
primarily.
Now you're getting apartments.
Apartment communities, so different world. And so 10 units, most of them are going to be 1 bedroom. So big expansion, but it's likely going to be in 1 or 2 buildings. We're just kind of...
And you negotiated management? Is this a management contract?
No, this will be arbitrage.
Okay,
yeah,
arbitrage.
And I think it allows us to quickly get in the door into a new area. That's the thing with arbitrage, right? Again, it's easy to get in there, show proof of concept, credibility. And then when we have operations actually running in that location, now it's easier to find investors to say, hey, we're currently managing 10 units. Hard to, from Canada to say, hey, can we manage your property there without showing proof? So arbitrage, and that's why this layered approach is nice to incorporate both as with your strategy for growth.
Yeah, I think people in general are pretty open to it in Florida. So I have some coaching students who have been making calls on that and having luck.
Yes.
People are saying yes.
Yes.
Even without them really showing much of their own story. But it's just, you ask enough people and the sales pitch makes sense. So if you speak it confidently, I like this guy, I'll give him a shot.
That's essentially what it is. You're just having honest conversations. And I think once you actually believe and understand the value that you can bring to the real estate investor, then that confidence comes across. And so you're just kind of sharing how it works and why it makes sense for them. And I think maybe the key is as well, let them know that you've built this business to serve the real estate investor. I mean, that's what you're doing here. And so I think it's important to remind yourself of that. You're not just in it to make money. You're not convincing the landlord to say yes. You're letting them know, I built a business to serve you as the real estate investor. Here's how it works if they're not familiar with it. And it just makes sense. And you can feel throughout the conversation, if they're not familiar with it, they're asking questions, you're just giving answers, and they're just like, okay, let's give this a shot, essentially.
So what's your average rent per unit on those?
In the US?
Yeah, in Florida.
Yeah, it'll be about 1,800 or so.
1,800. And is this in like an apartment with a pool, like a central pool?
That's right. A lot of amenities, different world entirely.
And they're okay, because the thing you got to watch out for in Florida is so many HOAs and condos restrict Airbnbs.
And that's it. And so I would say apartment communities is what we wanted to create that immediate scale, right? To negotiate 10 units in a building is what you can do.
That's where it goes, right? I mean, Aaron Bay's been on the show, and their model, and Karsten, like their model is just go get apartments. And not necessarily vacation rentals, really.
No,
like they're more like apartment
usually
stays.
Not.
Would you say that's your angle too?
Yes.
Not really vacation rental, but apartment stays.
Yeah, but we want to avoid the seasonality that comes with vacation rentals. This arbitrage model, in particular, the arbitrage model, you're looking for consistent demand throughout the year as much as possible.
You think you'll get that there? I guess in Tampa, it's a big city. There's industry. There's you're gonna have traveling nurses and things like that.
You get it all. Yeah. You get the hospitals. You get the students. You get the vacation travel for sure. Looking at Bradenton and stuff, so where there's beaches nearby, but you get a lot of families, just renting out for months as well, and so you get to benefit from short-term rental, mid-term rental.
So how did you go about proving your numbers to yourself? Because 10 is not a small commitment. It's not like you did a trial of one and then said, let me add more. You just said, okay, throw it all down, kind of like you quit your job. And there had to be a degree of certainty. So tell me about how you go about using your financial background to confirm your suspicion that it would be profitable.
Yeah, and so this is back to that funnel system of researching for new locations.
So regulations worked.
So yeah, that's right. Regulations are strong, and then coming down from that funnel is the macro demand. So at this point, it's really just the big stuff, like who's traveling here and why. Is it a big enough city? Is it going to pull enough people? Okay, great.
And once you're in a big city like that, it's hard to damage a city like that to a point where people aren't going to be coming to it.
And essentially that's the point. So people ask, where does this work? It works almost everywhere. There's inherent value, right? If you're paying a landlord for an empty property, you're going to be able to sublet it, furnished with flexible 3-night stays, like for much, much more. So this model works almost everywhere. But then you want to get good at this, right? You want to get the right property, and especially if you're doing 10. And so you keep coming down the funnel system to say, okay, the city works, but where within the city is that next piece of that funnel, right? Because there's hot spots, even in Burlington.
Like close to tourist spots or close to a downtown area.
Correct. And so Burlington's a great example. North Burlington, north of, or call it close to, in between upper middle, QEW and Dundas, it just doesn't have the same demand. I'm sure it works. I'm sure arbitrage still will make you money, but it's nothing compared to the southern end, especially near Brant and near the water there.
Yeah, near the park.
And so we have properties in both. Management are the ones north that are only okay, but our properties in the southern end of Burlington are fantastic. So you keep coming down this funnel. location within the location is what we're talking about right now. And then after that, it's the property types, right? So depending on the types of location, big homes work because you're attracting a lot of families, or one bedrooms work. And so you need to find what type of property works. And then after that, you're really getting into the specific numbers. So I use Price Labs. People think of Price Labs as the dynamic software tool that actually integrates your operations. It helps you price your properties.
Does it give you suggested pricing for even if you don't own it?
The market, you create a market dashboard. It's phenomenal. So people use AirDNA. They think those are the two. Use AirDNA for the research, use Price Labs for your operations. And we use Price Labs to actually do our market research. They have a whole tab. It's called Market Research. You create a dashboard.
So it works just like AirDNA then.
Yeah. And so once we've kind of narrowed in the location, you create a dashboard, and you can create as big of a radius as you want of the location, like within 5 kilometers, within 10, and it gives you all the specifics for that very specific location. And the interesting comp sets for you. You can pull up all the listings and see why they're performing well.
The funny thing is like Price Lab, like they actually have the data because it's their clients that are feeding the data, whereas AirDNA is scraping based on the web.
Correct. So it's not even compared. The data Price Labs provides is bang on. And I would say the comp list is the most important thing because you're looking at a very specific location. So we're negotiating within specific buildings. And so now we're checking out, who's performing well
So
here.
What kind of information will Price Labs, because we use it for our camp, what kind of information will it give you? Is it giving you a general occupancy expectation based on a pricing?
I would say it gives, first of all, the averages in that area, which again is not that useful.
Like an average price per night?
All of it. Average price per night, average occupancy, average revenue per month. The averages, and so what you get from it is that the numbers themselves aren't helpful because averages never are, even with a small, geographic location. But what you can get from the averages is at least the seasonality of the general.
Seasonality of the area. So if you see June is different from January.
Yes, and how different, right? So it'll show you a breakdown by month, and you can see, oh, wow, this place is really seasonal. That's really good to know. So I like to get the seasonality from the averages. But where we're looking for specifics is the comp set. And so you can filter by number of bedrooms, the amenities, whatever.
So you can find a comp and see how they perform pretty much exactly, right?
Yeah, and the Price Labs are just giving it to you. So like they'll give you all 100 properties within the 5 kilometer radius that meets your filter criteria. So the types of properties you're looking for. It gives you the link to their Airbnb listing, and it even projects their revenue, projects their occupancy based on their actual performance over the last 365 days.
Does it tell you what they did?
Yeah, I mean, it's projected revenue. But you can verify, right?
It's projected based on pretty good assumptions, I guess.
Correct. It even tells you how many days it was active to make sure you're looking at a property that was active 365.
How does this not put AirDNA out of business?
I don't know how no one's talking about this. Maybe I shouldn't be giving away this, but like it's phenomenal. And now not just that, I can sort the comp list by revenue for the types of properties we want to compete with. Now I'm clicking through the actual listings of these top performing properties to find out why are they performing. And now all of a sudden the funnel has come down to like not only do I know I'm confident about the location, I know the location within location, I know the property type that's going to perform the best, and I know what amenities are needed to meet the needs of the guest traveling to that location, to that property.
All based on seeing ones that were successful. What are the common denominators? You can look at number of beds, how many people can stay, amenities, does it have the pool obviously is needed, hot tub maybe, what's it close to? If you can just match and hey, we have all these things, we could do it the same. Maybe we could take even better photos and stage it better and even outperform it.
Correct. You nailed it. And that's just it. And that's our level of confidence as well. We're looking at some of these listings where they have all the right stuff, but we know they're not running it as professionals. And we can make a big difference. We can outperform most.
So you were going to, let's just run some quick numbers here. You're going to be in for $1,800 a month on average times. Well, I'm not going to times that. I'll just do one unit. So 1,800 times 12 months. So that's 21,600 a year. Plus you're going to have utilities for the year. What are we going to say? Like a $3,000?
Yeah, something like that.
$3,000. And that'll include internet and TV, you think? Or
maybe it's $4,000.
Okay, so plus one more. So that puts us up to 25,600. You've got consumables that are going to get used up. What do you budget for the year?
A couple grand.
Yeah, $2,000.
It's not a big number.
Okay, so you're at like 27,600, and then from there it's cleaning, in a month, you're going to probably clean it, what, 10 times?
Well, yeah, we net those numbers out just from the data.
Okay, so
we charge a
go ahead and
fee
net.
that covers
So
it.
does 27,600 cover your expenses on the year? So you've got
Pretty
utilities, you've got consumables, and then you've got your rent.
Yes, those are the big ones.
And then the cleaning will be netted off.
With the cleaning fee that we charge the guests, exactly. And so we'd be looking to make, I think there's huge upside, but on the conservative side, we're looking at 40,000 per unit.
Okay, so 40,000 per unit minus 27,600. So you're going to be making 12,400
Per unit.
So if your investment into furniture on these, what do you think, 10 grand?
No, these are just one bedrooms.
So they're really small. So like $5 grand,
six.
So
six with labor.
your ROI is over like 200%.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And which is in Canada just much more difficult to do.
Yeah, it's on a small scale though. I mean, you're putting in $5 grand per unit, but the nice thing is once that pays off, now you're just purely cash flowing. So at that point, you've added 10 units that are each cash flowing over $1,000 a month.
That's the game plan.
Now, there's going to be ups and downs to that. Some months better than others.
Yes, and the summer's slow, and we are going to be launching right before the summer, which is not ideal.
Not everywhere. I mean, in Florida in general, July is actually a good month. And then it gets slow for August, slow for September. I think October's slow as well. And then it starts picking up.
Which is perfect, right? Because our core operations in Canada are the opposite. Really high revenue in the summer, which will make up for anything in Florida. And then when we're not making a ton here in Canada, we're making money. So that's the idea. Diversification, exploring new markets.
Right. So you picked Tampa. Was it that you wanted to have a Florida operation? Maybe give you a reason to go down there and enjoy some sunshine?
I would say, yes, but more so to expand and diversify our business. So we have a pretty big hold on the Canadian side, and the U.S. just offers a different world, more diversification, expansion.
Yeah, and people from Ontario specifically are very comfortable with Florida.
Yeah,
Florida is
certainly.
We love Florida. We love to go down there.
Yes,
and so many people they know are down there. It's a logical move for even if you were trying to somehow attract Canadian clients who maybe wanted you to manage for them.
Exactly. For all the reasons you've said, it was the most obvious, easy decision. I think there's some more lucrative spots out in the U.S., but there's something about the predictability, the consistency, the macro demand going to Tampa and Florida in general.
What I like about
crazy.
Tampa is it doesn't have as much of the vacational seasonality, which isn't terrible. Like, you build it into your model. All these numbers adjust. It's just seasonality is not fun to experience.
Yeah.
Like in Tobermory, our operating season is, it's from May to October, but really July and August.
Yes.
Those are the big months.
That's right.
Yeah. But it's priced accordingly. Like you get priced, but I mean, there's always an exception to every rule. In some markets, you can actually just do better. And if you keep your eyes out and you know the data, you can figure it out. And I think Tampa is a logical move.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, very cool. I've actually only been through Tampa briefly. I'd like to dig in because it's got some character. It's got some heritage.
I don't know that much about it other than the macro stuff. And so,
have you been there?
Well, we're heading out soon to start actually looking at these buildings before we sign leases. But
tell me about your operation. Like, what's it look like?
Yeah, good question. So our operation, we essentially break down our company into 3 divisions to help us map out the work. So the first is the existing operations, the day-to-day operations of our existing portfolio. That's division number 1. And now it's run almost entirely by our virtual assistant team. It doesn't need us to run every day. And so under the existing operations, we have guest management and experience. We have cleaner management, property management, and revenue management. So it's those 4 categories. The first 3 fully run by our virtual assistant team, with escalations coming to us only if there's some big problem. The revenue management, I still lead there. I enjoy it.
In terms
I'm
of
good
pricing,
at it. It's really
price
complex.
labs. Yeah.
Yes. And so it's something it's a passion of mine anyway, and it doesn't take much time. And so I lead still the revenue management side, but otherwise the operations take care of themselves. Tiffany, now being full-time in the business, is called that COO. So she's overseeing the work, a lot of leadership development on the day-to-day operations and focusing on what we can improve. So VAs are running the day-to-day processes.
So one VA for each of those positions?
Actually we have, we've broken our business into 2 regions now as well. So with the 50 listings, we have 2 full-time virtual assistants running one region, one supervisor, and one just entry-level position.
Okay. And that entry level wears all three hats.
That's right. So that entry-level position wears all three hats, and they're just doing the work. The supervisor has more experience and deals with they oversee
also
the work.
a VA. The supervisor
Yes,
also a VA.
that's right. Supervisor also a VA, but we're able to make sure we're not missing anything, no mistakes. Just really high quality guest experience is the focus, and we really need a supervisor who isn't actually having to do the work and is just making sure that we're catching everything.
Right.
And then they also have some decision making power that as supervisors, for sure, when issues come up, property management stuff, they'll make a lot of decisions on their own. We've set out what those decisions are, and then we have Tiffany overseeing those four. So Tiffany's the COO. We have the supervisors, and then that entry level position.
4 VAs in total so far.
4 full time, and then we have an evening and nighttime VA as well, which they're just really just responding to questions.
So a special rate, just as needed, you pay them, kind of thing.
That's the idea.
All Filipino.
Yes, all from the Philippines, and just it's been incredible.
Yeah, there's some great people in the Philippines. How much do you find you're paying per hour for your VAs?
I think we pay more than most, and I think this comes back down to our goal of building a really good company rather than just maximizing the math. And so our entry-level VAs make about $5 an hour. Some I've heard of $4, but our supervisors make $8.
That makes sense.
And so they're excited to work here and work with us and grow.
I think what happens if you get at those rates is they would be kind of crazy to ever leave.
Yeah,
and I think generally speaking, they're pretty loyal anyway. Because even at $4 an hour, a Filipino is making quite a bit of money.
Yes,
yeah, that's a lot compared to their colleagues and their people that live there.
Yes, and I appreciate you calling that out. Yeah. But you can feel that even at $4 and $5 an hour, we do feel that loyalty. But at that $8 an hour, we talked to them about this from the beginning of leadership development, which we take very seriously at our company. We want to do this for the next 25 years, and so we want to build leaders within our company, and so we spend a lot of time there on one-on-one conversations with those showing the most, not only the most talent or competency, it's more the mindset of wanting to take on more, wanting to grow, wanting to act like an owner of the company, and so those have naturally moved into our supervisor positions, and they're crushing it, and we're beyond our expectations of what we thought virtual assistants were going to do for us.
I think they could be fantastic, and you just gotta work with them. You gotta train them.
It's so important, and I just think it's just not done nearly enough. They're treated more like assistants rather than
give them the title. Let them wear the hat.
Yes,
because they can learn that.
Absolutely.
And do you have a lot of people do this? They have area managers who will manage in certain areas. So if something happens, they're the ones fielding the emergency, going out to the house, all that stuff. Because clearly you can't do that across Canada.
I see. Yeah. Local teams are critical. That you just need to, again, similarly though, you're not just hiring someone from TaskRabbit every time that something happens.
Is that a Canadian version of Thumbtack?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
TaskRabbit, Thumbtack. There's a few of these sites, but it's very similar. No, our goal when we expand to a new area is to really build local teams, and it takes way more time.
And are you bringing them in as a percentage of profit, or how do you do that, or is it just hourly?
But I would say what we're looking for is someone who's really kind of in the early stages of building their business, a newer cleaner, a newer, handyman, property management type of individual, but we're going to bring them a lot of value, right? Because when we expand
you just
to a
call
new
your
area,
handyman. If you need somebody to go out, you just call your handyman. They go out.
Yeah, and we pretty much they're our property
your
manager.
VAs quarterback that.
Yes, correct. Our supervisor. So
your supervisor.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the entry level doing the guest management, cleaning management, and property management, they'll do the basic work, but then for the property management items, if it's anything more than something really basic, they will escalate to our supervisor. They reach out to our property manager, talk about the best solution, and then they're there.
So your property manager, tell me about who is this like in your operation?
Well, in each city pretty much has their own.
Okay, so this is the person I was asking about. Now the property manager, are they're a percentage of revenue?
No, same. They're essentially building their own business
as a property manager,
or general handyman, some of everything.
So how do they get paid? Is it a flat fee or
per job typically,
or just per call? Like if each time they go out.
That's it.
How can you negotiate that? So if you have to go to the property, it's $50, or they have a fee schedule for call outs.
And that's part of our early conversations when we're building these teams, is to agree that that it makes sense for both sides. Here's what we're looking for. We're looking for, flexibility. We're looking for lower costs on smaller items because our business just doesn't work if they're going to charge $110 just to show up. But at the same time, it needs to work for them. So we're just kind of gaining that agreement.
What would a typical, like for somebody to go out to your property, something happened, a toilet clogged, and you needed somebody to go out?
For the most properties, I'd say it'd be $40 or so.
$40, so they'll pop out. And are you finding these people? Are you building these relationships from like an investor community? Is it, you're finding them on TaskRabbit and then building a relationship?
Yeah. It's a lot of manual searching for, jobs, profiles out there. So Kijiji.
If they're on those profiles, a lot of newer people, right? Because that's where new people go if they're either new or not good. You got to find out which one they're.
Exactly. And that's
or on drugs. It could be that too.
Right. Yeah. And that's what Tiffany does now as the COO. Yeah. So we don't have our VAs trying to find these people. Tiffany's reaching out. We have our job profile. She's asking the questions. We're trying to find people that work, and we usually try to find several, so we have a bunch of numbers handy. And what normally happens is we end up finding our property manager over time. So it starts off as just having a couple of handymen that are available by WhatsApp. Hey, can you run over there? But they're not necessarily part of our team.
And it's your supervisor that coordinates that.
Yeah, that's it. But then over time, what we find is someone is more reliable, more keen to do the work than everyone else. And then instead of having 4 people that we reach out to randomly, we have someone who's now responsible for, and usually multiple properties in a location, right? Tenant and stuff is neat all the time.
And they
so
still
they get
keep
regular
their fee
business.
schedule. It's just like as it comes, and then they send you a bill once a month or once every couple of weeks or something.
That's it.
Yeah, that works better than splitting them in on revenue or percentage of revenue.
Yes.
I mean, but you might get more buy-in for like customer service and fixing things. I guess your hope is that they're not going to be belligerent when they show up. They'll be polite, but they're not going above and beyond with the hospitality. But is your guest really expecting that? Because your VAs are probably doing that. Your supervisor's probably, hey, we'll take care of this for you. We'll make sure it's right.
But we want that all around. And so it's like any other business, right? It's this constant talent improvement. So it's not just our virtual teams who are full time, but our local cleaners and handymen. Like the difference it makes to our operations when a cleaner feels like a partner in the business, that there are eyes and ears on the ground. They're the ones that are able to see, hey, some maintenance is needed. We want them to catch the maintenance needs before our guests do.
And this is just communication. You just talk to them, but you're not bringing them in on contingent commission.
No, we're helping them build their own business. But that's the value of our company that's growing so quickly, is that it's not one property, right? In their location, they're probably
so they
cleaning
see
10 properties. Yes.
You help us, you feed my family, and I can also work for other people.
And their fee is likely to grow over time because it's also worth it to us that they treat our business like their own. And to your point, when they have to meet guests, they act as our property manager on behalf of us. They're knowledgeable about our business. And this takes time. You don't get this from your first handyman call, but after 2.5 years, it's like every city that we're in, we're constantly trying to improve our talent and find people where there's that mutual value.
Okay.
And
so with 50 units, you got a lot of people to pay as these things come up.
Yes.
Who's your financial controller? You?
Yes, although the software these days is fantastic. So I'm the financial controller, but I'm not the one paying the bills anymore. Ultimately, I've given that to our supervisors who understand all the decision-making criteria.
And how can they do that? Do they have logins to your online banking, or
they're a user? So I'm with Scotiabank, but they have Scotia Connect.
With the business banking.
It's a business banking
so they
system.
can go in and they can release payments, or they.
Yes, but it's just all with rules that we are able to put in place, right? So our supervisors have they can't add payees. I have to add a new payee, and they can only pay up to a certain amount. So that way, if something is significant, it needs my approval.
So when their
first.
user is logged in, there's a max versus your user is logged in. You can do way more.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's only so much that they can do, but generally speaking, they can pay all of our cleaners and all of our property managers for basic work, basic cleans, basic jobs. And they also know what numbers we're looking at, what number is too much, what they need to be looking for. But if everything aligns with the criteria we've set, they're just reviewing invoices and paying the bills, and even doing our bookkeeping after that. That after they make a payment.
I had a similar operation. My assistant would always put in the bookkeeping, because when she'd pay something, I'm like, well, you might as well enter it into the software.
Exactly.
But then we also have a VA bookkeeper who just bookkeeps all our companies. And what we found, we have a WhatsApp chat for each company. and we just drop it in the WhatsApp chat,
yes,
and then
exactly.
it gets
and that's what we plan to do. Obviously, we're going to shift into growing our second company as soon, and the synergies are going to be there, which we're excited about. But you asked about our operations. So the first is the daily stuff, right? So that's our existing operations, which runs real smooth now with our regional system, supervisor and entry, and with Tiffany overseeing the all of that. But then the second division of the company is our growth division. And so this is the market research that we're doing to find the right locations, the right property types, and then all the way down to then the lead generation in that area. So, okay, we found the right area. How do we actually find leads for landlords? How do we negotiate and close on those deals and leases? And then onboarding that property, launch, design, launch, et cetera. So that's a whole separate division. Mostly Tiffany and I run that. And so I would do very much the sales side, market research, sales, negotiations.
You're doing outbound cold calls, or
That's
you're just calling rental listings, or
essentially, or applying to
applying to rent.
Yes, apartment community applications, and then you get on the phone with a leasing agent, then you explain, hey, this is what I do. I'm looking. So that's my job.
How often do you find the leasing agent says we don't do that? Or they're probably pretty knowledgeable on it, right?
They're very knowledgeable on it. And so usually you get either like a strict answer of why not. I think you mentioned before, like a lot of apartment communities don't allow it.
Yeah, so you just call the leasing agent, you'll find out real quick whether
pretty much. And then you also maybe get a sense if they're open to it or not, and that's my opportunity to demonstrate our level of professionalism and discipline in how we run our business.
And is that all verbal, or are you showing them your website? Do you have a website?
We do. We have a website which helps for credibility. I also share like endless references of other landlords in Canada who can vouch for the level of professionalism and the way we treat their property and their neighborhood. And so being able to speak that confidently to a leasing agent, if there's any wiggle room, I feel confident that we're going to be able to negotiate, especially since we're coming in with 10 units. So you mentioned that's part of the strategy, right? We could have gone in and dabbled with 2. The reason for 10 is that it makes those conversations way easier, right? It goes from leasing agent to some owners, like they come bigger decision makers
get
come
involved.
in. They say, "Oh,
you want to take all 10
units?"
But that also shows your confidence too.
Correct.
Like, look, we have all these in Canada. We know what we can do.
And it helps with concessions and everything. So not only are they likely to say yes, but I can gauge how much value I bring to them. Right?
You might be able to get a little bit of a better deal on the units.
And often upfront rent. We can get 6 weeks free, 2 months free, depending on how much they need me. And it's pretty obvious in the conversation, right? If they're kind of indifferent.
So if they really light up when you start talking about this, okay,
that's it.
And I don't imagine this is that hard of a sell. You probably don't have to have that many conversations.
No, it's really not. It's either they don't allow it, and so it's a short conversation. But then if they allow it or they're interested, it's a great deal for them. And all they need to do is prove that I'm legitimate, which I have the resources to do. Yeah. And then it's an easy
That's
close.
where building your brand over time is critical. Personal brand, business brand, build them both. Treat them like gold.
Yes.
I mean, I can always just say, hey, I've hosted a top Canadian real estate podcast for 5+ years.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
considered an authority on real estate, and I'd like to rent your place.
Yes, that's it.
That helps.
Yeah, it really does. And that confidence comes over time, but it also comes from the fact that we focused on building our business to serve those clients. When I'm talking to them, it just comes off my tongue. Like, why does this make sense for you if they have
just
questions?
A natural confidence, right?
It really
you can't teach that. It's only through experience that you can get that.
Yes. Although I think there's some, mindset going into it that we can certainly share, right? The confidence part takes the time, but
but if you had already confidence in the industry, then you could learn that next piece, right? How is this related to what I've already done? You make that connection, that builds the confidence. There you go.
That's it. So those are the 2 main divisions: existing operations, growth, so bringing on new properties, and then the last one is the C-suite stuff. It's where Tiffany and I share the work of the CEO, CFO, CMO, just to make sure that we spend enough time focusing on the direction and strategy of the business, that we're developing talent within the business, in all of our local talent in the cities, and also our virtual assistant teams, that we are doing risk mitigation stuff, diversification. How do we want to grow? Where do we want to grow? So Tiffany and I kind of share that C-suite stuff, and then we put the plans in motion. But then that essentially frees me up to not do much. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Now with Tiffany working full time is just an absolute difference maker. But we don't have that much to do every day. As I just described, the daily operations are run by our virtual team. And so the only work that needs to be done is really making sure we're focusing on that corporate strategy and business development side, which only takes so much of my time. There's only so much more value that I can bring to our company. Well, you could try and
grow more aggressively. I guess that's
and we will. And I think even that. And so when there's times for like really aggressive growth, I'm more involved, right? So the Florida
when you bring
expansion.
those on, now you're going to be involved in the concept, the layout, like what kind of furnishings. I mean, I'm sure you have some help.
Yeah, Tiffany will lead more
of that.
We just launched a 9-plex in New Brunswick, and that was really Tiffany's first real go at the full stage launch, from design to ordering to coordinating the local teams to do the work. It's a crazy difficult project to do remotely.
I want nothing to do with that.
Yeah, well, in fact, neither do I. I would do it, but I mean, Tiffany took hold, and I can't believe what these units look like. So she essentially created like a boutique hotel. The 9 units look ridiculously good, and she loves it. And so it works out well that once the sale is done, I would say the strategy that the lease is signed, most of my work is done, and then Tiffany takes it off to design, launch, get the unit running, and then now it's with our teams again.
Yeah, I've noticed that many girls I know have a real knack for that. Like, it's not a lot of men. I don't know why, for whatever reason.
It seems to be much more of a natural talent. She's patient. I'm not, and anyway, overly impressed.
Yeah, that's great.
It's awesome. And so I would say when it's time to do a growth operation, I'm heavily involved.
But once it's up and running, then it's just check-ins with your team who's already doing good, making sure they're happy. And
is our big picture strategy in motion? Is there any gaps we need to close? And otherwise, it doesn't need me. And that's what has us, starting this, second company.
Okay, so you mentioned off camera that you're now rolling out some coaching as well, and I figured that's a natural segue because I think we are getting a little close to the hour. Yes, we are. So maybe I was going to ask you, is there stuff you wanted to cover that I hadn't asked you about?
Yeah, and so that's where I'm spending most of my time over the last 6 months. So the first year was all growth and mistakes and learning. Year 2 was really optimizing the structure and operations of our business, which we've now done. Now it's growing and it has stability. And so the next move for me was to create a coaching program in this industry, a coaching and mentorship program, really to help others escape the 9 to 5. Because I have that time is the most obvious reason. But beyond that, that's my background. I've spent my entire adult life helping other people create wealth, and starting with that mindset shift of where wealth fits, how it can change their life, and now, of course, having a proven business model that can allow them to do it. It's something that I'm crazy excited about, building another company from scratch with the end user in mind, who's now that 9 to 5er who wants to escape. How can we create the best coaching program there is to help them escape that 9 to 5 and realize the dream that we're living today?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, and for any of my coaching students, like, it's not that I have Airbnb, but I don't do arbitrage or management. I know so many people who that was the game changer for them. And for those people who want the short term, want to retire their jobs, I can't think of a better strategy that's more accessible for the average person.
Well, and that's just it. And so, the industry opportunity is beyond what I think people realize, because of the ability to diversify your business, create a sustainable business that aligns with your financial needs, your risk tolerance, your goals. And I think that's where a lot of the current coaching that I see out there from our competitive analysis is the gap still. They share the technical expertise on how to build an arbitrage business, how to get landlords to say yes and whatnot. But what I feel is missing is creating a coaching program that meets people where they are and help them build their business that is unique to their needs and their risk tolerance. And so with the ability to co-host and manage and create those clients, provide that service with no capital, no risk, is just one of the many ways you can build this business without much capital, without risk. It doesn't have to be this big flashy thing. You can grow at your pace over time. Not to mention the industry. It was projected. So I think the short-term rental market was $113 billion in the world in 2023. $113 billion. It's projected in 2033 to be $315 billion. It's still in its infancy. It's exploding. And the best part is that it hasn't been professionalized yet. Most short-term rentals are being run by part-timers.
Small time. Yeah, it could be institutionalized soon.
Over time, it will. I don't know. It'll take some time to get there, but now is the opportunity because it's not professionalized. We're one of the only ones, and there's a few others doing it, and so now's the time. If you want to escape that 9 to 5, I don't know a better industry that allows you with no barriers to entry right now. Huge opportunity, and with the right coaching and guidance to avoid the mistakes and diversify and help you risk manage your business. I just don't see too many better ways to leave that 9 to 5 path.
Yeah, that's my assessment of it as well. Like it's
I'm
not
glad to hear that.
It's not very difficult. Like that's number one thing that comes up with coaching students if they say they want to quit their jobs. If I think that it's a fit for them, like you need to look into the strategy, because I can't really think of anything that's going to accomplish that for you faster. You're not going to go burr your way out of your job in the next 3 years.
No, that's just it. And that's where we were before, right?
Yeah.
Creating long-term wealth. This is being able to create wealth that will change your life today.
Yeah.
And my background, that's what I used to do, right? I work with clients to understand, where are you today? And then based off that, how do we get you to where you want to be? And so now we get to build a whole company that does that. So we're pretty pumped.
All right, Charles, is there anything else we need to cover before we wrap up here?
No, I think that's it. Other than investors looking for management of their Airbnbs, especially in the GTA, we're here. If you just want to reach out, I think you'll have some links on the bottom.
Yeah, we can. I think you shared your links already, so we'll make sure our social media guy gets those, and he can include those beneath the video.
Perfect.
And feel free to connect with Charles. It's a pleasure having you on the show. There's a lot more I could ask you, and I'm
well, then
always
just get me on
curious.
again. I love this. Your new studio is looking awesome.
Yeah, we'll get you on again. Like, it'd be cool. Like, we have a lot of potential now because we can live stream with this setup, so we can do live switching, live streaming, and it would be real cool to do like an interactive show on this topic. And then we'll just post it as a podcast episode after the fact.
Okay. Well, hey, sign me up. I'd love to do it.
I'm thinking out loud right now, but I think it'd be cool.
I'm here.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for doing this.
Thanks,
let's stay in touch.
Cool. Bye for now.